When I say love, I was born into a world of love. So what does that mean? For me, I was born with a family. I was born with security. I was born with food on the table. I was born with a family that every night when I went home from school or when I went to bed, my mom and dad would hug me, they'd read me a story. And that for me is what love is. I just always remember that. I've just been born into so much love, not even knowing what danger was. I didn't know about the iniquities of the world, the evil of the world, because my family protected me from that. Me and my sister, we just had, I would say, a perfect upbringing. I mean, you didn't even know about the opulence of the world, riches and poor. We just had everything we could ever want. So that for me is what love is. So I always start on that love. Now, in that, life changes. And the big message, the first part of the speech is to explain to people that no one is exempt from trauma. Nobody's exempt from something really disastrous happening to them. And then all of a sudden your world changes overnight. So it's really important to understand that even as a professional. For me, my dad came home from chickenpox. I was 11 years old. Now, my sister had chickenpox. And then my dad caught chickenpox. Now, my dad was also a child from care, so he never built an immune system. So getting chickenpox for him was like getting cancer. It basically made him incredibly unwell. Within 2 weeks of him getting chickenpox, he was in intensive care. Now, this was 1st of April, 1991. I was at my grandma's house, and my mom was getting ready to go and see my dad at the hospital, and the phone rang. And it was my Uncle Gary, my mom's brother, and he said, Chris, put your mom on the phone. Your dad's dead. I said, excuse me, what do you mean? And in my head, I'm thinking, April Fool's Day. April Fool's Day, where's the gag here? And I started to laugh. I think it was a nervous laugh. And I said, what do you mean dad's dead? I went, He said, no, your dad's brain dead. I said, brain dead? What does even brain dead mean? My mom ran to the phone, and I could see my mom on the phone, and she collapsed on the floor. And I watched as my grandma cradled her, as a mother does. The next day, we went to the hospital, and I was stood by my dad's bedside. I was 11 years old, my sister was 12, and I had to say goodbye to my dad. I had to say goodbye to my hero. I had to hold his hand, and it was still warm because the machine was still on, but his brain was dead because the spots had gone inside his body and killed all his organs. He didn't have an immune system. So I stood by my dad's bedside, I held my dad's right hand, and I had to say goodbye to my dad. It's probably even now, in that moment, thinking about that, it's probably, for me, the most traumatic experience I've ever had in my life. I'm 44 now, and even to think back then, that moment is when my childhood was taken from me overnight. That's it. That's when my life changed forever. Now, after my dad died, trauma is a weird thing. And if anyone's lost a parent, you will understand this, that you become alienated from the group. You become alienated from the community because my dad was the heart of it. You know, Christmas Day, you get invited round to friends' house and you'd all have laugh, but we weren't getting them invites anymore. Even when I went into the shop, it was a bit weird because nobody knows what to say to you. I'm like, oh, how's it going? Oh, yeah, it's going great. My dad's dead. You know, nobody wants that awkward conversation. But there was a group of people who did want that conversation, and there's a group of people I didn't know exist. Now, for me, I never knew about the care system. If you would have said to me at 11 years old, what's the care system? I couldn't give you an answer. But to think about it then, I remember watching Oliver Twist and seeing the Artful Dodger and Oliver Twist and seeing all them boys just kind of gelling and building this community and looking after each other. And that's the community I found when my dad died. Those were the boys I could have that conversation with. Those were the boys who said, hey, how are you? You know, I've lost my mum and dad too. Those are the boys my parents kept me safe from. But I realized, I thought, oh, this is different. This is very different. But I felt safe in that moment. I felt safe, like I belonged to a part of that family because my community was gone. It was finished. But these new boys, those were the ones keeping me safe. Those were the ones who were in that moment when I just needed some kind of solidarity. Those are the ones who gave it to me. And as young boys do, like they do on Oliver Twist and things like that, we'd go shoplifting. Not because we were criminals, because that was just fun. It was juvenile delinquence. It was harmless fun. And those of us who are old enough here will remember Woolworths. Just to run and grab some sweets, run off. You feel great when you just grab loads of, some jelly tots. You know, don't you do? But that for me was exciting. And it kind of enabled me to exert that negative energy, because back home, my dad had died, my mum had started drinking heavily. I didn't recognise my mum. And I think when that day when my dad died, I also lost my mum as well. She lost her identity. She was drinking. I'd go home, my mum would be unconscious on the floor. So again, having that escapism, going out there and doing these things, really helped me. It's fine, kind of about therapy at the time. But these little things turn to bigger things. You know, you think, hey, let's go break into an old property, or you want to break into a factory or something. Yeah, it sounds like great fun. So we start doing that. And then I'd get caught. Police would bring me back home. They'd bring me back home to an unconscious woman on the floor. Social services would call, right? So, because every time I was coming home, I saw my mum was unconscious. She was drunk. There was bottles everywhere. My sister was taken to my grandma's house. I couldn't go to my grandma's house. I felt like the protectors boys do sometimes. No, you want to protect your mum. So I stayed at home with mum, thinking my mum's going to get better. You know, I'm going to help my mum. I don't want to, you know, I want to come home and mum's choking. I want to be able to call the ambulance. I want to help her. That's what young boys do. They are the protectors. But social services got involved and a decision was made. And they said it would be better for me to go and have some respite with children's home. Give my mum a breather, give me some breather, get that support what I needed. But I wasn't just sent to any normal children's home. I was sent to a children's home called Skirpit Lodge Children's Home in Halifax. It was built in the 70s. And at the time it was built, there was no DBS checks. There's no Ofsted, there's no regulator. So you can imagine what kind of places these are. It was run by paedophiles. And at the time, the head of children's services in Calderdale, the guy called Rod Ryder, if you mention his name because he's dead now, he was the head of children's services. He built this children's home for his pleasure. And for 30 years, young people like me were going through their then doors and were subjected to all kinds of abuse, physical, mental, and sexual abuse. This was my new home. And I remember the social worker coming to collect me, got my bags packed, I was excited. I was going somewhere magical. You know, I was sold on this thing, but there's other boys there your age who you'll get on with, they'll be your friends, they'll look after you. You don't have to worry about the trauma back home. You're going to be in this space where you could do whatever you want to do. That's exciting at 11 years old. It's exciting when home is really traumatic. It's exciting when everything you've ever had, everything you've ever loved is being taken from you. So going to this children's home was exciting for me. But quickly saw it wasn't supposed to be that place, that kind of place of safety and security. And that's the paradox of a children's home. It's supposed to be kept safe, but you're surrounded by danger. And I remember arriving down the long driveway, and all the staff members were stood outside the children's home, greeting me. I thought, well, this is fantastic. It's like a hotel. It's like a hotel for young boys like me. And everybody was really kind. And when we went in there, we were taken into a room. We'll give you some chocolate cake. We'll give you some sweets. I remember the manager of the house doing this on my head. It felt like it was my dad for a moment. Giving me a hug and doing this. I thought, well, this is what I need. This is the love and security I need. But that quickly vanished. I think the second day, I woke up for breakfast and I was buttering my toast in the kitchen. And the manager of the house was stood next to me. I didn't put butter in all four corners of the bread. And he hit me around the head. And with big hands. And he hit me. And when he hit me, I just heard the ringing in my ear. And I knew straight away, this place is dangerous. This is not a home. There's nothing stable about this place. And just to articulate that a little bit better for people who've not been in a children's home, how it used to be then, as David, as you will know, even in winter, these places are colder than the winter. There is a smell of formaldehyde. You don't know what fear smells like until you're in these places. Fear does have a smell, and it smells of emptiness, where children should be running around with blue eyes, with big smiles on their face, but they're walking around emaciated and walking around with fear. They're white, pale white because of fear. Go into the bedrooms. There's no curtains, so you can't hang yourself. There's plastic sheets on the bed, and that's not if you wee yourself, that's for other reasons. This was my new home. Now, weeks passed, and I saw things like staff members tripping up kids on the corridor. The kids went flying, and they're all laughing. There was no, come on, you're okay, come on, I'm sorry, that was a joke. It was a game to them. It was a game to treat us like second-class citizens. At night time, when you wake up, there was 3 boys in my dorm. I'd wake up, and none of the boys were there. And for years, it plagued me. Where are these boys going? Why am I not involved in that group? They were taken to another place, and they were raped. And I lived for years with this guilt. Why wasn't I taken with them? Why didn't happen to me? Now I found out years later, I was sent there on respite. I still had some family members who would check up on me. So I was a bit of a liability to these boys, to these pedophiles, predators running this home. I was a liability. I was bringing the police home all the time, getting arrested. They didn't want that. They saw the referrals, what came in, because they had that power. You had the head of social services, the head of children's services running this place. So they could see the most vulnerable children in Calderdale and hand select them. So they didn't want people like me there. I was a nuisance. 3 weeks in, I was told I'd be collected by a male member of staff to social work and taken to the moors for treasure hunting. Now, the older boy said to me, don't go. Whatever you do not go with that social worker. Do not get in that car and go treasure hunting. Treasure hunting was a hidden term for child rape. I ran away that day and I never went back to that children's home. At 12 years old, I found myself homeless. 12 years homeless. Crazy, isn't it? Thinking about this. Me and David spoke about it earlier. You can't make this up. This is some of the trauma, what happened back in the olden days, back in the 70s, 80s, 90s in the children's home. At 12 years old, left vulnerable on the streets. Now, when you're vulnerable like that, you become very valuable. All the gang members want to make some money off you. But same thing at the time, it's to have that freedom to be on them streets. I felt safe on the streets. Who feels safe on the streets? Not in a care home, not in that care setting, which was supposed to protect me, but the streets. And I'd do anything for these older boys. Again, it's that security, that family thing. If you speak to young boys now who are on the streets caught up in gangs, the first thing they'll say to you is, I'm not here because I'm a criminal. I'm here because I'm here to survive. I'm here because these boys make me feel like I'm a human being. They keep me safe. And it was the same thing for me. I was sent all over Calderdale, Yorkshire, with bags, drugs, to deliver to different people. You know, we speak County Lines is new. It's been around for many years. It just has a different name now. But it came to a dramatic end for me. I wasn't going to school. The services weren't looking for me. I was on the streets. I was living with these older boys. I was smoking, drinking, taking drugs. And one night I was in a house, we call them a crack den now. And heroin was just becoming very popular in Calderdale. And one of the older boys said, let's give Chris some heroin. Yeah, I'll take some heroin. Sounds great. And I was led upstairs. And I remember they were wrapping the thing around my arm, getting ready to inject this fluid into my veins. And as they was just about to inject that fluid into my veins, somebody kicked the door down and the police ran into the property with social workers. And all these boys and everyone else just dispersed everywhere. I didn't know where to go, so I went back to my grandma's house. And when my grandma opened the door, I just started crying. I've not been able to cry since my dad died for a year and a half. So I just let everything go. I just said, Grandma, I can't live like this anymore. I want to be a child again. I just want to be normal. I want to go to school. I want to do what normal boys my age do at 12 years old. Play Action Man, play computer games. I don't want to be running up and down with these boys who are making me do stuff I don't want to do. 2 days later, the police knocked on the door. I thought, right, I'm getting arrested. I've blown it. And the police officer said, I'm not here to arrest you, Chris. I'm here to give you a lifeline. And he gave my grandma a piece of paper. And on that paper was the percentage amount of heroin about to be injected into my arm. And the police officer said to me, that would have killed you imminently. Boom, pin drop. But that was the moment. I needed that. I needed to hear that. I needed someone to say to me, get your act together. This is a lifeline. Wasn't in school and missed a year and a half, so my education was low. I was traumatized. I was damaged. There was no counseling. I think I went to CAMS, had 2 sessions, but I couldn't take that serious. Sat in a room with a therapist who knows nothing about the care sector, knows nothing about me, didn't even look up at me. I think Rebecca Pierre spoke about tip-box scenario. I'm sat there with somebody who's trying to make me feel better, trying to make me my mental health better, and they didn't even look up to look at me once. So that didn't work for me. So my grandma said, hey, I know a boxing coach. He's great. He'll help you. I don't know about boxing. She went, no, it'd be great because there's boys in that gym just like you, but they've chosen a different path. They've chosen that positive path. Strong male mentors, advocates, people who want to look after you, care for you, and not hurt you. So I thought, yeah, that's great. I'll give it a go. She phoned a boxing coach and he came on the phone and I still wasn't sold. And he said, look, you get to knock people out without getting arrested. That's not and that was it. Like, you know, even now, like when I work with young boys, that's the first place I take them is to the gym, not to make them into these fighting machines, but about that environment, that kind of safe environment where these boys are in there who've been through what you've been through, but they chose a different path, or they've been through it, got through it, and now they want to give something back. So that's what the boxing gym was for me. It was like it was a home, it was a lifeline, and I built some great relationships in there, and I found my identity again. I think that's something we don't talk about enough when we're working with people in the care system. Is that's the first thing you lose is your identity, because those powers above, they take it from you. They call you things like lack. They call you things like, they don't even know your name. Come on, have a bit of respect. Respect me, I'm a human being. But being in that environment did, and I became obsessed with boxing. I was enabled to exert all that negative energy, all that past trauma from being in a children's home, losing my dad, and put it to some good use. And I became really good at boxing for that reason. Became a champion. And at 18, I turned professional as a boxer. Life was great. Couldn't get any better. But there was still that thing in my head, that trauma, that damage had already been done. I didn't get the right therapeutic support. It wasn't available for me. So I'm going through life thinking, this is great, I've got it, I can handle it. But inside, I am dying. It's poisonous, it's killing me. Because I've not been able to sit down with someone properly and go through what happened in that children's home. Go through all that trauma and what I witnessed and experienced, things I've never been able to talk about. And you just hold them inside. And what that does, it slowly kills you. You implode, and then you explode, and then you do something really stupid. And that's what happened. I was a professional boxer at 18. I'd walk around the streets like Rocky, and people would come out with bags of meat going, oh, your dad would be really proud. And I love to hear that. They say, your dad would be really proud of you. Can you imagine that? As a boy, your dad's your hero, and you say, your dad, you do like that now, looking down on you going, you did it, kid. And that really made me feel special. And then my first professional boxing match in Scotland, and I lost. And I think I lost for many reasons. I was young, I was 18. It just wasn't right. I was good in the gym, but I didn't really want to be a boxer. I liked that environment. I didn't want to go out there and be a fighter. I was a lover more than a fighter. I like the arts. I like reading, But then when I lost, going back to Halifax, my hometown, those people who want to see you lose, they quickly drag you back in, It's like, oh, you didn't make it, did you? And I fell for that. Because I started to get depressed. Losing that fight, realizing that maybe this is not the career I want to do, it triggered my mental health, and I became really unwell. I became so unwell that I turned to drugs and alcohol, as most people do. It was there, it was accessible. And for me, it was that first time one of these older boys had given me a line of cocaine. And that was it. It made me feel omnipotent. It made me feel, for that small, minuscule of a second, it made me feel like I was something special again. But it just spiraled out of control. It got so bad, I started to get in debt with drug dealers. I borrowed money off everybody. The hero became zero. Then when I was walking on the streets, people were coming out and going, your dad would be disappointed with you. Look at this. Look what you've become. You become everything he despised. And that hurt me. Hurt me so much that one night I decided to take my own life. I found an abandoned shed. I'd gone in there, they put the rope around my neck, and I was ready to jump. I'd made my peace with life. It didn't want me. I didn't want it. It was in that moment I remember the story about my dad. We were the same age at the time. I was 18, 19 years old. But my dad at 18 was raising 2 children. It was one winter, he couldn't get a job, so he found a job in a slaughterhouse. It was cash in hand, it was Christmas, and he had a pedal moped. And he's going to work one morning, and he falls off his moped, and he breaks his ankle. He's cash in hand, so he's got to go to work. He's got 2 kids to feed and a wife at home. And he straps his ankle with sticks, and he completes an 8-hour shift in a freezing cold, wet slaughterhouse. And I'm about to take my own life. It just played in my head like a video recorder, and I'm like, Chris, if this is what bottom, you've got to get over this. You've got to find that strength to take that rope off your neck, go out there and make a difference, change your life completely. And going over that story in my head made me do that. I took the rope off my neck and I decided I'm going to change my life. I survived something when my friends didn't. The 3 boys I was in the care home with who were in my dorm all committed suicide before the age of 21. I was still here. I was still alive. I had a responsibility for them. I had a responsibility to go out there and make a difference and help other people like me. And I got obsessed with that. But I couldn't do it when I was unwell. Couldn't do it when I was in a state, when I was still recovering from alcohol and drug addiction. So I had to get away. And like most care people who've been in care will know, we're not scared to dream big. We're not scared to have these crazy imaginations. For me, I said, I'm going to go to LA. I'm going to go to LA and become an actor. People thought I'd gone really crazy. What? You're going to go to LA and be an actor? I went, yeah, why not? I've got nothing to lose. I've got nothing to lose at all. I did some research, saved a bit of money. I went to Los Angeles, found a drama school, and I started to do acting training, but not because I wanted to be an actor. Because I looked up things like James Dean, Paul Newman, people who've gone through similar traumas as myself, and thought maybe I can do that. Maybe that kind of therapy works for me. And it did work for me. The drama coach found scripts which could relate to, and getting on stage and going over that scenario, going over that trauma again, and finding solutions, finding reasons. And it did work. It was brilliant for me. I was there for 3 years. I came back to England, but I knew I couldn't go back to Halifax. So I moved to London to be an actor and got a job in a bar like most actors who move to London do. But this is where it gets really interesting. This is where serendipity falls into play, where luck, when you believe it, even if you're not religious, you believe that somebody's watching over you. And I was working in the bar one night, and this beautiful woman walked in. She was absolutely stunning. And everybody who I was working with, mate, she's out of your league. You haven't got a chance for that. And she probably was out of my league. And for some reason, I was working out, and I had the tightest top on. I used to wear the tightest tops, so my muscles looked big. I'm stood at the bar, and she's coming to the bar, and I'm like, oh God, what am I going to do here? What am I going to do? She's beautiful. For some stupid reason, spoke in an Irish accent. And I'm not even Irish. I'm from Yorkshire, struggled with English. And it's like every time she came back to the bar, I'm phasing it out, trying to get back into the Yorkshire accent. Anyway, long story short, this girl became my wife. I got married. We had a beautiful kid. But more importantly, it was the first time in my life where I really trusted someone. I really kind of just opened up. I didn't have to lie. I didn't have to have this bravado about this and that. I thought, you know what? It's not going to work, because when you've been in care and you've suffered that kind of trauma, you scare people away. It's a defense mechanism. I think sure some of us in this room can relate to that. It's like, I'm not going to fall in love with you, because all I knew in my mind was people you love die. Going back to my dad, going back to that trauma. So when I met this beautiful woman who changed my life, I pushed her away. I was horrible to her. I was paranoid. I was jealous. There was still a lot of things which need to be fixed upstairs. And it got to the point she was going to divorce me. I thought, no, I've got to get some help here. I'm not going to lose this lifeline again. It's the most beautiful woman I've ever met in my life. She's amazing. So I got some help. And I became better. I got stronger. But what happened, she said to me, you know your problem, Chris? Let me tell you your problem, Chris, as women do, because women can tell you. He said, your problem is, right, you're like a bad workman who blames his tools for doing a bad job. He said, that's your problem. He says, take your past and use it. Boom, that was it. That eureka moment, that epiphany. That was it. That's what I needed to hear. And I says, what do you mean by bad tools and workmen? He says, go back into the care centre and help other young boys like you. Boom, I was obsessed. That was it. You know, when you have a moment where you know what you want to do for the rest of your life, that was it. I went back to college, I studied, and I got a job in a children's home. We had a party because I couldn't find a job when I left the bar. I'd done about 100 temping jobs, even worked in the chicken factory. And if you've worked in a chicken factory in summer, you know that's hardcore. Hardcore. So I got a job in a children's home, a private children's home, and we celebrated because I'd really worked hard for this, and it was my passion, it was my life. And I met the manager in Sidcup. I'm not going to mention the name of the children's home, but I met the manager, and he said to me, he says, Chris, when you go through those doors, we're not going into their world. They're coming. No, so you're not. They're not coming into your world. You're going into their world. And I still remember that. I said, what do you mean? He says, don't say anything. Just come inside. And then when he opened the door, there's a kid swinging off a chandelier, and all the stairways being kicked in, and the carpets are sticky. And I thought, I'm home. This is where I belong. I love that moment of going back into that environment. But the thing is, I realized I left care 30 years ago. I left care 30 years and went back into the care system in 2014 and realized that nothing had changed in 30 years. And when I say nothing had changed, the system hadn't changed. I walked into that children's home, the staff members were sat in the staff room drinking coffee, ignoring all the children. I thought, no. That's not why I want to do this. I want to help kids like me. And I rebelled. I went out there, made a difference. And I worked with some boys who were who you would write off, gang affiliated boys. But when I started to do some work with them and chat with them and respect them, I seen a difference. I seen these boys start to, you know, little things like knocking on the door and saying please and thank you. They might be trivial to everyone in this room, but to boys like that, it's a huge success. And you can grow from that. I think going from that, I could get a boy up in the morning to go to school. And from going to school, I could get a boy to start thinking about his future and dreaming about his career. And that's the kind of success I had. But I saw the system didn't want to support that. Didn't want people like me making a fuss because it already established itself. It's just a care system. And these boys will grow up and go to jail. So why bother? Because I care. That's why I bother. I left the private sector because I thought maybe it is corrupt. Maybe it is about money. You know, seeing some of these referrals come through for these boys, £5,000 a week, but not £1 was spent on these boys. I once took a young boy to the cinema, bought him a drink, he came back and gave the receipt to the manager. He said, "What's this?" I said, "I bought him a Coca-Cola this summer." He went, "No, you don't buy him anything. You're going to give me that money back." I thought, no. I left and I went to work for the local authority, thinking it was going to be better. The training was better, but the system wasn't better. I went into a local authority children's home with staff. Yeah, the training was good, but the staff are still in the change staff room doing nothing. You've got kids roaming around. As David pointed out earlier, in 2017, there's cars pulling up to the children's home, and these kids are getting in that car, going missing for 2 days, and the staff are not reporting them as a missing person. So from David's time in care all the way through to my time, nothing's changed. Kids are still being neglected, abandoned, abused, and used. And I thought, you know what? I'm going to start writing about this. I can't sit quiet anymore. This is my life's work. And that's where Damage came from, my first book. Now, the council found out I was writing a book and they started their investigation and I lost my job. They said there was trust issues. They got scared. And I said to them in a tribunal, they're giving my job back. They said, "You can have your job back, but you've got to sign a disclaimer. You're not going to write about your experience." I said, "No, I don't want my job." And when my book was published, they sent every single one of those directors a copy of my book, and inside it said, "Never judge a book by its cover." But what that book did, it gave me a platform. It was a time in the care system where there was a loophole, where you didn't want to talk about it like mental health 30 years ago. You didn't talk about it because if you talk about it, you're affiliated to it. And if you're affiliated to it, you're some kind of sinister human being. I said, no, we've got to break that sound, change that narrative. Going onto TV and radio and being able to represent young people, being an advocate for those vulnerable young people all over the country. And that's what Damage did for me. Starting to build some momentum. Introduced me to great campaigners like David here, who've been doing it for years, and other people on social media who we reached out and said, look, we started this 30 years ago, Chris. We need people to continue this work. And that's what that did for me. The second book, I realized, all right, this is what the care provision's like under 16. But what's it like 16 plus? And I'm going back to my own experience. I was dumped at 16. I was dumped in a bedsit like Rebecca Pierre, like David, like most people, like 98% people who leave care, they get put in some kind of provision, a bedsit, semi-independent house. I was in a bedsit at 16, and on Christmas Day, I remember having a pot noodle. I remember upstairs, there was a guy who was in his 40s, who was an alcoholic. There's a guy downstairs who was in his 50s, and he was a drug addict. There was one toilet. The toilet was covered in excrement. I couldn't even get to the bathroom some nights because the guy who was doing heroin was just passed out on the toilet. I was 16 years old. Imagine that. Imagine 16 in 1996 and coming back and seeing it still happening. And it is happening. It's still happening today. So that, for me, was the catalyst. I'm not keeping quiet anymore. I don't care what happens to me. I don't care if I become unemployable. I am getting the message out there, but change is coming. You're not going to get away with it anymore. And that's where the second book came from. The second book got me a place with David in the care review when we sat on the expert by experience board. And I think I've got to agree with David that it was a disaster. It was an absolute failure. And do you know why? Because there was nothing independent by it. It was financed by Gavin Williamson, who was a Conservative MP at the time. And we had a voice.
You've been sat down and listening and watching his conferences, like quite a few. And I thought, I'll just push and see.
But when you've got some people, I mean, some really formidable campaigners from all over the country sat around a table saying, how are we going to change the system? Give us your solutions. And we gave him some bloody good solutions. And he was just ignored, like, you're just here for, you're to make us look good. We've got a board here, look, with some lived experience, but it wasn't good enough. And I think Josh McAllister knew it wasn't going to be a success, hence why he quoted, it's going to be the civil rights movement of our time. Quite a bold statement. And then to abandon it, and, I've been very honest with Josh and said, Josh, I'm sorry, I'm disappointed. That could have been so much bigger than it was. It was rushed. You got like 4 years' work pushed into 12 months. But one thing which did come out of it for me, two things actually. Number one, I wanted to see semi-independent care homes regulated by Ofsted. We got there. It's not great. It's every 3 years, but that's a movement. That's the recommendation which has been accepted. And also, one of the things I need to talk about quickly is protected characteristic. Now, we all agreed the expert by experience board, but this would make a huge difference. Why would it make a huge difference? I mean, I've been campaigning for the last 12 months talking about this, and everyone says, what is it and how is it going to make a difference? Well, it's a part of the Equalities Act, but there's something which I say to everybody. Why should care experience be a protected characteristic? Number one, and it's the most fundamental thing ever, no child puts themselves into care. Who wakes up and says, I want to be put in a children's home, foster care, and have everything taken from me? That alone qualifies it for a protected characteristic. Number two, at 16, the state says, the corporate parent says goodbye to you, don't call me again, don't contact me again. Your parents don't do that. At 16, you are classified as a young adult when your peers are classified as children. Now, this is not just, a few things here and there, oh, well, that's just a one-off. This is a national problem. And even when we've been campaigning and lobbying Parliament for protected characteristics, we travel the country, we get testimonies from children all over the country, thousands of interviews, lobbying Parliament, getting 98 councils to pass this motion. It's a cross-party agreement. I got a letter from a foster carer in Huddersfield. This 16-year-old girl leaves school. She's got the best qualifications in the country. She applies for Greenhead College in Huddersfield. She doesn't get in. It's a prestigious college. She's a girl in foster care. She's got the best grades. The guy contacts me and says, Chris, why has she not got into this college? I went, leave it with me. I'm going to contact the college. I'm going to get some information. I contacted the college. I CC'd in Anne Longfield, who was a children's commissioner. I CC'd in the local MP at the time and other people who work within the care system. I said, I want a breakdown of every child you would take from the care system. He couldn't get back to me. I got an email back a few days later saying it's an administration error. I knew exactly what it was. The panel, quite elite panel, quite middle class, did not want this young girl to be mixing with their children because there's this stigma attached to the care system, but we're all going to rob you and we're all going to be these people who beguile you into a false sense of security. So that's why a protected characteristic needs to come in play, because you don't get to treat people like second-class citizens, regardless of who they are or where they come from. If anything, they should be put on a pedestal and given priority. Because I've learned one thing, right? I've learned one thing in my campaigning for the last 2 years, is that I've met some of the most intelligent care leaders. One here today, Zara, who are formidable. These people are world leaders, but they've got to fight hard to level up. They've got to get 4 jobs just to get a degree. You've got no family support, you've got nothing. So why should we not protect that individual? Why should we not make it a protected characteristic? Give them a voice in places they've never heard. It makes sense, but when you go to Parliament and you talk like this, they don't understand it. You're talking a foreign language to them. So you start talking about money because that's the only thing you understand, politicians. So right, let's talk about it in your language, yeah? A kid gets no protected characteristic. They get dumped in a bedsit. They start having mental health problems, start taking drugs. They get involved in street crime to pay for the drugs. They end up having mental health issues and they go to the ward. They end up getting put on risperidone. They end up getting loads of court fines, falling into arrears. It costs the taxpayers millions and millions and millions. They go to jail. That's £250,000 of your money every year. Or, Mr. Politician, let's do something a little bit clever. Why don't we make it a protected characteristic? Yeah? Do a quality assessment. Check the house out where you're sending them. If it's a nice house, that's great. That's a first start. Let's get them in some form of education. Let's get them an advocate. That works, doesn't it? Yeah. Let's see that progression forward and forward. Let's see them thrive in the community. Let's see them go to university. Let's see them leave university and get a job. Let's see them get a job, pay tax, and contribute to the economy, saving you millions of pounds. Politician, oh yeah, it makes sense now. That's their language. Whew, I'm out of breath. I'm going to conclude with this. Look, I think there's a theme today. We all understand what the care system is. It's not great. It's not getting better, but there is a movement. There is a movement, and it's here today. It's here with Zara. It's here with David. It's here with the other speaker. Sorry, I can't see where she is, but even with Rebecca Pierre. There's so many amazing people out there campaigning for change, but we can't do it alone. Yeah, it's got to be social work. It's got to be key workers, care workers, campaigners. It's got to be everyone involved in the care sector coming together as a unity to make a change. Listen, my name's Chris Wilde. I was once a child in care. Change is coming. Together we can make a difference, and we will. Thank you.
Yeah, any questions in the room?
Yes, any questions? It's one of them weird speeches, like everyone's like, hang on, I need about 2 hours to get.
Okay.
If we take questions
Yes.
from the room first, yeah.
Hello.
Seems inadequate for I'm trying to be optimistic.
Yes.
And I'm struggling, and my question is about the protected characteristics campaign.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, if disability has been a protected characteristic since the beginning of the equality.
Yeah.
And my local tube station, where I tried to get this morning, doesn't have steps. It hasn't had steps for 120 years. There's no plan. So, national organisations like Transport for London still get away without put steps in a busy tube station. Why is being protected characteristic going to make a difference when it hasn't made a difference?
Well,
Those, why are pregnant women still?
the main difference was right now, 50% of women in jail and 28% of women homeless. These statistics are real, right? So that first of all makes it. It's no problem if you don't use it. Did 16-year-old girl in the first grade, we was able to go back to that deadbox, support to have that promotion. I was able to use that. I reminded you that to make it characteristic. So I want to understand from you why that girl didn't get you to your college, and she's got the best grades in British. You've got to use it as an ace card. Listen, when we're lobbying, when you're in Parliament, you're talking about these questions keep coming up, and then played a very, very, same statement earlier, but it's been around forever for sex, race, religion, and stuff like that. And yet we still see discrimination every day. Discrimination is never going to go away, but I prefer to have it than not have it. For someone like me who works within the sector still, if I go to a house and see a young girl, 18 years old, living in 2 room years, men, getting overcute that that's encounter. You'll go back to the encounter emotion. Yeah, that girl is in her bed with 2 dangerous people. I then go see a solicitor and say, well, you've done a quality assessment and I can see that can be debt to benefit of that health. No point. If it's there, you can use it. If it's not there, it's a waste of time. But it's even with disability rate. If I go to work and I say something to my colleague who's gay, I'm going to look for a job. But I go to work, said, oh, what she wanted to I told somebody I was in care and they made a joke about things in his wallet. So if it's a characteristic, that's what my point is, that's discrimination on what you find. But I can't into people's lives, and I know there's something put out recently on Twitter of a housing association and what's saying legal. Very fortunate, saying no care leaving, so to apply for accommodation. Come on, man. Come on. If it's a protected characteristic, you know what I'm going to do? You're going to feel what we're going to sue you. We're going to sue you for even putting it on. That. They got contacted by 2 million people who found that. One of them said to me, it made her feel disgusting, made her feel sick. It's 2024. What do you mean we don't want to protect the most vulnerable people in society? Why? You know, yeah, if it doesn't get passed as a legislation, you can still activate it in. But if it does get passed as legislation, it won't make a huge difference unless you get people like me, David, Zara, and other people making a big difference. I prefer to than not. For me, it's an ace, and I've used it.
There is a related comment by Paul Nelson. Says the protected characteristic campaign needs a social movement alongside it to actually have a chance of lasting success. There is a long tradition of social movements that demand change, that then get legislation, which is also never going far enough.
No, but it makes a valid point, like anything disabilities, you know, and stuff like that. I think sometimes people just give in. You know, I spoke to someone who's a caregiver and he's got a disability, and they put him in a concrete apartment, and he's in a wheelchair, and there's no lift. It's fine. You know, I had to go back to the MP and say, come on, how is this even possible? You know, and on top of him being disabled, he's got loads of trauma in that area because that's where he was raped as a child. It's these little things, but you've got to use it. And I think people don't know how to use the Equality Act to the best of their ability. People are scared to even challenge it sometimes because it gets brushed off. And believe, you know, there is a social movement in the care sector. It's building momentum every single day. You want to go on social media now and see there's about 100 campaigners, and they're all doing some great work in education, you know, in like David, you know, David, how long have you been campaigning for? Sadly, no. And people like him that triggered me. And I met him, I thought, I want to be like, I want to be a campaigner, you know? And our other friend, I can't remember his name, from Islington, Sean. These people are formidable, and it was just like 4 or 5 campaigners back then, but now we've got hundreds. Len Sisse said, we are a tribe, and together we can make a difference, and that's Len Sisse. He put an article out yesterday saying he's never seen a movement like this. That is the depth we need to make it happen.
It's just a comment really, about what you said earlier in relation to identity. Because when you talk about all of these people, I'm care experience as well, that's our identity. We now have a tribe of people that we can look up to and say, well, you know what, this is amazing. I never even understood what it was to be black. Years ago. No, I mean, see it, physically see it. A black human being in my area for the first time. It's just like a mind-blowing episode. You know, a black child goes home to a black family and their mum and dad thinking what it is to be black. You're living in a white area, in a white school, you're the only black child, and you're living with white people. So everything that you're saying, and even just like the theme of everybody else saying up there, it is about identity. Don't talk enough about identity. And for your identity, sorry, you need a bomb.
You need a bomb. If you think about care placing, if you're going into foster care, it's like placing a child in the first family what comes available because there's no one else. No, careful matching. You know, the thing with Albanian boys and Eritrean boys, now I see Eritrean boys getting placed with white families who've got racial backgrounds and stuff like that. If you can't find a suitable home for that child, then don't put him in a situation which is going to be detrimental for the rest of his life. We've all got a lot of work to do. And do you know what? I love social work, and I get a bit of stick because I represent young people in care. I can stick to that. But at the same time, I acknowledge the work social workers do. I acknowledge that my social worker, she had 3 children. She took me out to Pizza Hut. I said that to my mate, social worker. He said to me, Chris, I'm a data analysis expert. I sit at my desk and don't leave it. I've got to play so many kids a week, it's like a sales job. And then he says, then I get my management team coming down on me because I've not hit my KPIs. When did social work become about KPIs? It's like, that's mental. That's why kids, you know, go, don't even get me started. Because I get so angry because I think you guys deserve a massive pay rise. All them directors who are in south of France where you guys are doing the work, get your ass back to work and show some solidarity, show leadership. And that was one of the recommendations from Josh, wasn't it? Getting those leaders back on the front line. They've got to do about 100 hours a year. Show true leadership.
I just wanted to make a point. I had a big row with what's her name? Linda Bellos.
Yeah.
Who was claiming that as the lead in Lambeth Council for Children in Care, she never visited her fucking children's home. I was so, how can you even do that, John? And she's now saying that people are having, oh, my lamp, sorry.
You pick that up.
She would, the people were being so badly abused in the Lambeth Children's Home at the time. She needs to take responsibility.
Yeah.
Didn't want to, but I still keep pushing it. Those people who are counsellors and all these people who are the ones in control, they need to take some responsibility.
Yeah.
Because it's no good that 50% of young boys that enter from the care system are end up in prison.
And I know, that's my job. I always don't have to jail. We put care champions in jails now. That's what we do. We start putting care champions in jail.
Oh,
Yeah.
so one
Wow.
1/3 of the young offenders is so.
Yeah.
The carers.
Yeah.
What should be parents?
And it was heartbreaking for me that these boys gone through trauma as a child, been in children's home, ended up in jail through bad decision making. But then when you get in jail, there's no support for these kids. So then when they leave, you want to go back in. I'll tell you a quick story. I did that Channel 4 News thing a few months ago, and I went head to head with the head of the union for prison officers. I went into Cookenwood Jail. There's 80 inmates in Cookenwood Jail. Spent the day there. Of those 80, 30 have come through the care system. Of those 30 have come through the care system, 16 had committed murder at 16 years old. They're not getting out of jail till they're 34. And I sat there with the boys and I felt sorry for them. I said, this is not your fault. And then they just stumped in these cells all day. But we've created this system. We've created this system which is failing the most vulnerable young people. And it takes everybody to push back, challenge decision makers. Don't be scared to lose your job because, we've got to fight for this. Sorry, come on.
I just wanted to say, so I'm the regional strategic lead for the South East fostering. Government have funded us for a pilot.
Yeah.
So we've got 20 local authorities. And the idea is that we come together, or we galvanise all those local authorities to increase the number of foster carers. And so I brought my team along today because I was like, we can't be the drivers. We need care experienced adults, children to be the drivers. So for us, we're here today so that we can really understand. I used to be a foster carer as well and have had some other experiences with family in terms of fostering, but just to encourage you really to know that
Should have care experienced people that are paid as part of the team.
Well, that's some of the discussions that we're having actually. And there are across the South East, there are. And I think what I can say is that there is a commitment to not just to increase the number of foster carers, but in how we go about it, making sure that that's being driven, not just with a spirit of co-production, but actually who is it that's leading that work as well. And part of, certainly for me being here today, is to make some of those relationships and those connections. I am a disruptor.
That's it. That's what I'm going to hear. That's what I'm going to hear.
Trying to work together to do it.
We've stayed quiet for too long. I had to go to 2 funerals a couple of months ago. 2 18-year-old boys. Croydon, who had been care leavers, no family, nobody turned up to that funeral. No counsellors, no social worker. I stood there. I didn't even know him, but somebody contacted me and said, Chris Wild, will you go to that funeral? I went, of course I'm going to go to that funeral because he's part of my community. And I'll go there out of respect. I don't want to go to any more funerals ever again like that. And that's why we need to come together. We need to push back. This is not going away. This is not going away. We've started it and we will finish it.
Well, please don't leave, guys. Don't let us leave without exchanging contact details because I think we've got a unique opportunity. There's only 9 pilots across all of England, and I think to get foster carers through the front door, it's not just numbers. We need the right people that are going to be providing those homes.
Yes, absolutely.
And you're best placed to be informing on who those right people are.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you. Listen, I've probably taken up far too much time because I can see you getting up, getting agitated.
There is, one more. So would you like to mute?
It's not relevant.
Samantha, can you hear us? If you, I don't know, if it's still relevant.
Yeah, I can now.
Yeah, so
Sorry,
please.
apologies. Yeah, I just wanted to support what Chris was saying. Chris, thank you so much for speaking. It's always I always really enjoy hearing you speak, and you, David, as well. I know you're still in the room. It always impacts me every time. But I just wanted to kind of back up what you were saying, Chris, about protected characteristics. You'll know from the national event that I spoke at alongside you recently, Hertfordshire County Council passed protected characteristics with very minimal issue. If I'm perfectly honest, we got it through really quickly with full support of political members across our county council. And it's been really powerful, not only for employees that have then identified themselves as care experienced, but also allowing us to change policies and procedures. And we're right at the beginning of our journey, and there's lots and lots to do, but it's a movement that allows you to do so much more than we are currently, and I really want to see it under the Equality Act. But I'd encourage anybody that could campaign for their local authority to do it, to absolutely do it. The more people that sign up to it, the more chance government will pass it as legislation. But not only for us as a local authority, but we're speaking to mental health services, and as a 2-0 authority we have 10 district and borough councils, which is complex. We've asked them to pass care experience as a protected characteristic as well, and we've really taken a lead by example kind of approach. So I massively encourage anyone to campaign for it in your area if you've not been able to get it through. I think it really has the opportunity to achieve real change.
Thank you, Samantha, and I respect your work. We was on a panel together recently, so thank you.
Any more questions? Final questions? Final question? Yes.
Just one on the comment again, just reoccurring from the statistic and not enough, because it's quite clear that in every kind of discourse and every institution, care experience is people, and it really should be. And from everything of today, even I get shocked sometimes, even though I'm trying to see, and I've always said my parents that it hasn't changed, or that I'm still the same. So we really do in this room think, if what everyone's saying, speak up, change, and
Listen, it started here, it's here, it's there. But that's generational, and it's got to stop somewhere, isn't it? I hate the thing. Obviously, I come to see you doing something like this in 20 years from now, talking about the same thing. It would break my heart if that happens. I'd like to think someone like you in 20 years of study going, well, we did it. The care system is brilliant. It cares for people going out there getting degrees. These young people are the leaders now, the politicians. That's what I want. That's all we all want. You've got to, it's your voice as well. And you have a powerful voice, believe me. You do. You've got to use it. And I talk about it my wife's going to divorce me for talking about protected care. Like, come on, get it. Yeah, you can. But honestly, I'm not a professional as such. I'm just this guy with a bad experience. I'm really passionate. I've been looking to get a career out of it, but I've been looking to make a difference to so many young people's lives. And that for me, even when people read my books and say, Chris, I want to write a book. I'm going to go to university, Chris, because of what you do. That for me is gratification. We've got to keep that momentum. We really do.